What's up, guys? Ben here, bringing you another video today. It's time for our off-season preview series. I do it every year, and we're going to start with Toronto Ultra. You might be saying to yourself, Ben, why are we starting with this Toronto team? We're not talking about Optic or FAZE or New York or Thieves. Toronto, to me, is the biggest catalyst for a lot of off-season moves because as a team, they are stuck at a crossroads. So we're going to talk about their season, kind of how it sort of ended in lackluster fashion, and what I think are sort of the two kind of tracks this team could take in the offseason. One to kind of gear up and be a championship contender again, and another one to kind of sell for par and make roster mania very interesting. So let's dive in and talk about the Toronto Ultra. All right, so after going runners up last year in Modern Warfare 2, after they played really good on Saturday at the event in Vegas and then got waxed on Sunday, they decided to make one change from last season. After sort of a tumultuous offseason where it sort of was like, are they going to blow up the team? They're not going to blow up the team. What's going to go on scrap? They decided to replace Charlie Hicksey with Dylan Envoy coming over from the LA Thieves team that had also decided to make major changes. And they got off to a great start. Major 1, and especially on maps like Skid Row, they were sort of the best team. Karachi Hardpoint, they were very much ahead of people, Karachi S&D. And they pretty cleanly won that Major 1 in Boston. Unfortunately, since then, it's kind of been very up and down. And as much as we've talked about online, the New York Subliners being the 4th best team, looking at these results at events, it seems like Toronto, honestly, was sort of the 4th best team the last 5 events of the season. They didn't play their best Call of Duty at Major 2, and a lot of players kind of slumped, and we'll take a look at that in a second. And they were able to grind out a 4th place, but they were out very early on Sunday. At their home event, Toronto at Major 3, they lost in the grand final to Optic Texas, who waxed them. And that's been kind of an issue with Toronto, right? Outside of the Major 1 clean, 2 of the last 3 finals they've been to in the last year have been not close. So something they'll need to address in the offseason. And then unfortunately, since Major 3, it's been a bit of a slide. Major 4, they were upset early by LAG, had to make a losers bracket run. And just like Major 2, they were out first match on Sunday. Champs, kind of a similar situation. Thieves beat them early in the bracket. They were able to make a pretty good run. Beat Atlanta FaZe, for example, in the losers bracket, but unfortunately fell victim to New York Subliners when it was important to try and make it to Sunday. They did not do that. And then at the Esports World Cup, which they looked pretty clean in bracket, but a early loss to LA Thieves ended their season. A disappointing one for me, because I feel like this Toronto team should be better than the Thieves team on paper, but losing to them twice at the last 2 events putting this team in kind of a weird bind. Because you look at these stats and you're like, well, this team's got pretty much a 60, close to 70% win percentage in a lot of game modes. You see, like Karachi, they finished the season 18-4. The Skid Row record, they lost once in Skid Row in all modes before that was removed. They're 11-3 in Karachi control. You look at these numbers and it's great. And it's weird because then if you keep diving further, right, we look at stage 3, stage 4, generally pretty good numbers, although they did sag off pretty hard in S&D at stage 4. They were a good 6-star S&D team, played a lot in stage 4, Romy 4-3, and then the Karachi kind of also had a downswing as well. But I don't want to knock their S&D too much because they played pretty good at it at Champs. It then kind of cost them a little bit at EWC. Because like you look at their, their LAN record here, and like these numbers are pretty good. 12-5. I mean, control, maybe you wanted a little bit of a boost there, and maybe that's a little bit of the issue, but Hardpoint S&D were solid. Like you look at Major 3, and they did everything right but the grand finals of that event. I think since then, like, you see Major 4, right? Lose to LAG early, have to make the losers bracket run, lose to New York. Champs, lose to Thieves early on, surprise again, make the losers bracket run, lose to New York. EWC, they do pretty good in groups. Then they lose early to LA Thieves. Like this Toronto team, I don't know what it was at the end of the season, but Thursdays at majors and then at this tournament Saturday was crucial. Early on in the bracket play, they just weren't able to match the intensity of some of these teams. And some of the series they were very good at winning on, this year or early on last year, the year before. While we expected Toronto to always be a top 4 team, they kind of let those slide and they were just a bit loose. And I think that has put this team now in a weird bind. Because I think when you look at these overall stats at the end of the season, like, and I know KD's not everything, Slayer rating's not everything, these are pretty good. I know Envoy didn't have his best season, but if we click through on him and I kind of scroll down and we go by event stats, you see that, when push came to sub at the end of the year, yeah, he didn't have the best Major 4 tournament, but at Champs and at Esports World Cup, you see the S&D KD, Hardpoint KD, Control KD. Yeah, Control, he definitely struggled a little bit in, but S&D, who's a 1-5, 1-4, 1-1-4 overall, and a 1-2-1 in hardpoint, like when push came to shove, Envoy was kind of playing pretty good at the end of the year. And I think you kind of say for everybody, like throughout the year, they had their moments, but I think the inconsistencies when you dive into some of these players is sort of, they never really had a stage like they had in the first stage where all 4 players were peaking at the same time. Like you see with Kleenex, for example, Major 3 tournament, didn't play that great. Major 4 tournament, didn't play that great compared to other SMGs. And then at Champs, he was great in Search, but you see the other game modes really struggled. But then he played pretty decent at Esports World Cup in Hardpoint, but you see the other game modes. Control, he played pretty fine. The S&D of 0.81 is not really going to cut it from your aggressive sub player. And I could go on. I could show you Jamie's inside stats, and he was just as inconsistent as the other players. Crab was the one that I think really just kind of fried all year, and that's why he was a key candidate. But I think virtually the sort of point that Toronto's at right now is they basically have 2 options. Option 1 is acknowledge that what virtually everybody in the world knows and assumes about Scrap's situation is that he's not going to sign an extension and that he's going to make himself a free agent at the end of next year. So option A is to make a move here to try and get one last go with Scrap, win a chip, and get him to resign. Now, it seems like the obvious move at the moment is going to be Jamie Insight rotating out of this roster. He tweeted this, post EWC that he's restricted FA, which I'm not going to rant again in one of these videos about why it's just not what he is. But basically, he's been told by the team, look, like if there are other people that are interested in you, let's have a conversation about selling your contract on. So he tweeted out, and I haven't heard much about any interest on them, but I think I know why, and we'll get to that in a second. Yeah, so you could just kind of replace Jamie Inside as the main AR. Names that I've heard, such as probably Abuza would be the top option. Dan Ghosty, maybe not as realistic, but you kind of get my point. Like bringing another AR, probably generally a faster AR because Jamie Insight's one of the slowest players in the league, and try and improve your search and destroy. Match the speed and intensity that the other top 4 teams play as, because right now they've all kind of subscribed to that style of COD, right? New York, fast-paced team. FaZe, fast-paced team. Optic, fast-paced team. When they play well, like you see, that's sort of Toronto, sort of the odd man out. Either teamwork is what's good this year. They're definitely slower than some of those squads. The AR replacement kind of thing, I don't think Dan Ghosty is a realistic option. We'll get to a Thieves video probably later on this week, but basically the sum net of what I know of Dan Ghosty's situation is that he's probably re-signing a new contract. That's sort of the rumor behind the scenes, and he's gonna go nowhere unless someone wants to back up the Brinks truck, the Thieves, and buy him out. Abuza is probably the most realistic AR option. Was rumored to be a free agent. Apparently he's not. Big documentation is wrong. Go figure on that one. But Abuza buyout shouldn't be that too much. So if Toronto wants to spend some money and buy him out, maybe do a swap with Jamie and do a trade situation, maybe you can figure that one out. Abuza had a great season, especially on AR playing with Scrap, probably playing the slower AR role. I think he could really succeed on his team and also learn a lot from these guys. All right, some interesting options, potentially Ben Beans, who was on Boston and ended up at Carolina for EWC. He's an unrestricted free agent, so Ben could make sense, a little bit of a Euro connection with Kleenex, and I think he's probably good friends with a bunch of people on the staff, including Joe. Ben's obviously still got some development, but I think could bring that intensity, that fire that maybe they need. Byron Nasty, especially if Thieves end up upgrading him, could be an interesting option, but I don't think would be super high on their list. But obviously Thieves played really well at the end of the year, so you got to give him a look. Obviously got Diamond Con and Estriel, could be interesting options. I would say that both players had ups and downs, but are potential options that you can look at this roster. I think, again, not higher than Abuza. Dylan Attach, probably available because Team Falcons is now taking over this Vegas Legion spot. So Dylan could be available. Isn't the fastest player in the world, but is very experienced and could partner really well with Scrap, and wouldn't need to be a primary leader, with Scrap being kind of a primary leader. Dylan can really fit into his best role as a secondary leader in the squad. And that's really it. I mean, we could talk about Caesar, but I don't really think Caesar's going anywhere unless there's some kind of swap with Toronto, but even then I don't really see it. And I don't see them really entertaining an accuracy or a gun list. So I think that's really kind of all of their main AR options that are people on CDL teams, unless they're going to go for a U18 or a player that just turned 18 type option, or pick up Cobra, like a Challengers player. But I just don't see Toronto being that risky with this option. That being said, we get to option B, and I think this is the most interesting one. I'm surprised that no one is really talking about it, because there is a world if you were Toronto Ultra, and again, didn't have the best of season last year. You won an event, but kind of petered off. And no Scrap's going to walk at the end of next year. Why not just blow it up now? You have a lot of demand for him for scrap. I think even the teams that you would think that would stick like Optic and FaZe, I can have a little bit of a conversation if scrap comes to the market. Do we want to let him go to a competitor and make them better? That's not to say that Optic or FaZe won't bid for him, but they'll think about it. But I think more importantly, you can also get value for Kleenex and Envoy. It's a very weak SMG market right now. These are both very good, talented players who have won events the last couple of years. Envoy's got a ring as well. They are a hot commodity for a team like Thieves that probably need to upgrade the SMG level. Like a Vancouver, you kind of see my thought. There is a lot more demand for the SMG role, and you can kind of sell pretty much everybody in Toronto and start over. Do with Thieves and kind of pick up Challengers players, or pick up some kind of leftover CDL guys and kind of do a budget team and sort of rebuild from there. I honestly believe that there is not a non-zero chance that Toronto does this. They've flirted with it from what I know about their situation. The last 2 years, they've kind of flirted with the thinking on this. And they've never really been able to pull the trigger because the core of the team wanted to stick together. They wanted to keep it going. They feel like they can win. But maybe this is the season, especially considering Scrap's contract situation, that the dam kind of breaks on that one and they decide to kind of part ways with everybody. And I think it would really spice up roster mania. And to be honest, the reason I also think that this is possible is that roster mania has been really slow right now. We haven't heard a lot of rumors about who is thinking about what. The reason is I think a lot of teams are holding their cards close to their chest, because if they're thinking about Toronto players, they don't want that news to get out, because then everybody's going to kind of connect 2 and 2 together that Toronto's kind of a fire sale situation right now. And Toronto's going to have no leverage. The team buying players from Toronto's going to have no leverage, and it's going to turn into a massive mess. So I think right now, for me, as much as y'all want to see option A, because I would love to see Toronto give it one more go, I actually think at the moment that option B might be the most likely option that Toronto is going to go for. And it'll make roster mania very spicy. That turns out to be true. So yeah, I mean, I that's kind of how I feel. You know, it is always possible with Toronto. They change their minds at the last minute. They kind of decide to just do the obvious. If you want to kind of upgrade, replace Jamie with another AR and then kind of run it back. But if they do blow it up, it's going to get very interesting for the market, because almost everybody on their roster should be in demand. Toronto should be able to sell those players. And then I think they're going to kind of dictate roster mania, because their ability to transact those players or do trades subsequently is going to basically allow them to be the first domino to fall in the market. So let me know how much you think of that crazy theory. Like, I actually, based on reading the market right now, I don't think it's a non-zero chance that it happens. But I'm curious what you guys think. Like, if you enjoyed, subscribe for more. As always, guys, we're gonna keep covering roster media. We'll see you on the next one.